you're listening to Animalia Hour on KGVM. We are a group based in Bozeman, Montana. We talk about our relationship to other animals, and we hope through this podcast to inspire you to reject animal exploitation and use by living vegan. I'm Lucy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah. And we are missing our fearless Kevin today. This is a very new, different, weird thing.
Very weird.
To not have Kevin here. Kevin works for a very well-known package delivery service here in Bozeman. And this time of year is just very intense. He's been working 6 days a week the last few weeks and easily over 12 hours a day every day. So he's at work right now. So I know he's here with us in spirit. And we're going to
It's going to be weird without him.
do this without him.
It's temporary.
Yes, it's very temporary. He will be back definitely once the holiday season has passed. Today, we're going to be talking about protein.
The big one. We hear about it a lot.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because Lucy does quite a bit of outreach, vegan outreach on the streets and different venues and locations. And I was going to ask you that, like how often do you think you get questions from people that are related somehow to a worry or a concern about protein intake?
I think it's the one that I get the most often. Honestly, maybe 80 to 90% of the time when I have a conversation, people have a concern about protein. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of people's main concerns or questions when you talk to them about eating a plant-based diet or living a vegan lifestyle, because we've been taught implicitly and explicitly, which we'll talk about in a moment, we've been taught from a very early age that we need to be eating meat, dairy, eggs for our physical health. So this show, Animalia Hour, we definitely try to focus mostly on the animals because we believe that that is the most important reason to live vegan is to respect and honor the non-human animals we share this planet with. But every once in a while, we do kind of change our focus and talk more about the environment or, climate change or human health or, the ways that animal agriculture affects humans. And today's one of those days where we've decided to go ahead and tackle this because it is a real confusion. It's a point of confusion with people, and justifiably so.
Yeah, and also a lot of the time it's one of the reasons why people think it's not possible to live vegan. And I want to clarify a little bit the terms vegan and plant-based. Veganism is only really the stance against animal exploitation by humans. It's not really about anything else. When we say a vegan diet, what we mean is a plant-based diet, which is like a diet without animal secretions or animal bodies. So we make that distinction because someone could be easily plant-based, so they eat a plant-based diet, but they could exploit animals in other ways. So they wouldn't be vegan in that sense because they don't reject the exploitation and use of animals. Like, for example, I don't know, riding horses or going to the zoo, for example, or wearing leather as well,
Yeah. So I think that's an important distinction to make, that it's one thing to eat plant-based for a variety of reasons.
Like the environment, health, for example, yeah.
Right. And people do, I think we've talked about on the show before, people sometimes do see it as, oh, it's just a diet I choose, and I've been really good on my diet, so I'm going to cheat a little today. I'm going to treat myself to something that's not plant-based. Whereas a vegan lifestyle, a vegan mindset, the vegan paradigm is much more about we don't have a right to exploit animals or to use animals or to take from animals. And so I don't see it as a diet that I happen to be on. I see it as the way I view all of life.
And also it makes sense why people would be confused about vegans doing activism if that is what they think veganism is. If they think it's a diet, it makes sense that you wouldn't understand why someone is so pushy on a diet, because why do you care about what I eat, right? But vegans really care about who you eat and who you exploit and use. So that's the big difference.
I'm really glad you said that. That's really well said. Yeah, when we consider the victims, the ones who are suffering, the ones who are being exploited, then that's why we care.
Yes.
It's not just that we're pushing some diet on you. So, but the good news, if you take something away from this show today, I hope that you take away that the good news that we have not necessarily been taught at school or through advertising or from our doctors even. The good news is that all plants have protein and you can thrive on a plant-based diet, that you do not need to consume animals or their secretions in order to be a healthy, thriving, even athletic human being. But when we walk into a grocery store, any grocery store today, you will see numerous products that boast how many grams of protein there are per serving in that product. You see protein bars, protein powders, protein shakes, right? And there's this implicit messaging there that, oh, maybe I'm not getting enough protein. Maybe our diets aren't fortified with enough protein to be healthy. Maybe I need to worry about getting enough protein. That's kind of like the implicit messaging, the implicit education that we get, is that we really need to be careful about getting enough protein. And then explicitly, as school children, we're taught the food pyramid. We're taught that in order to grow big and strong and have healthy muscles and bones, we have to eat meat, eggs, and dairy. So it's explicitly taught to us from our educators, people we trust. And lately, it really does feel that our culture kind of has this love affair with protein. Like, I want to be athletic. I want to be healthy. I want to be fit and trim. I should be eating more and more protein. So carbs are kind of out right now, and protein is in. And of course, there's diets. 20 years ago, it was the Atkins diet, I remember, which was very heavy on animal protein, very light on, plants. And today it's more the paleo or the keto, which is, again, very minimal to no plants and very heavy on animal protein. So if this could be a concern, if this is something that we should take seriously, this idea that we need more protein, we're not getting enough protein, I think it might be one thing for us to kind of tease our minds about or wonder about would be, let's just ask ourselves a question of, when we consider ourselves, our immediate family, our coworkers and friends, and we consider the health problems present within our families, within our extended families, our coworkers, people we associate with, how many of us know someone who's struggling with cancer? Or how many of us know someone who has some heart problems? They're struggling with heart issues, or they've developed type 2 diabetes. How many of us know someone with high cholesterol, or they're on medication for high blood pressure, right? I'm pretty sure just about anyone listening to this today would know someone or multiple people with those problems, right? Now, how many of us know someone who have heard of anyone who has been diagnosed with protein deficiency? I mean, do we even know what that condition would be called? Have we even heard of that? Someone being diagnosed or hospitalized?
Maybe anorexic people?
Okay, very good. Right. So yeah, there is a condition that is referred to often as protein deficiency, and it's called kwashiorkor.
Damn. What a
Yes,
name.
kwashiorkor. It's considered a third world disease. And it's basically a disease of starvation. So yeah, it's quite possible that someone who has mental health issues around food, or who have like different eating disorders, who are literally starving their bodies, it's certainly possible that they would be diagnosed or hospitalized with a starvation issues, including protein deficiency. It is interesting, and I want to point out that kwashiorkor, it's often described as protein deficiency, but it's actually a combination protein/calorie deficiency. So often, and we'll talk about this throughout this podcast, what inhibits our body from being efficient at metabolizing protein is just a lack of energy, a lack of calories, a lack of carbs, and even fat. So when children suffering from kwashiorkor are treated with additional calories, and often that's in the form of cereal grains, their condition resolves itself. So if you're getting enough calories, your body is very efficient at recycling amino acids within your body, and the protein deficiency clears up. So here's a second piece of good news. So the first piece of good news is plants have all the protein you need, and we'll talk more in detail about that. But the second piece of good news is there is no such thing as protein deficiency unless you're literally starving, in a state of starvation. So that's a relief.
That just speaks to like the very good advertisements that certain industries may have,
Yes.
worked on.
It is. It's very curious because it seems like there is this universal messaging out there through advertising, through food packaging, that you really do need a lot more protein in your diet. And if that's the message you hear every time you turn on the TV, or every time you open a magazine, or every time you go into a grocery store, you start to just assume it must be true. A second thing I'd like for us to remember is that if you look at the animal kingdom of which we are a part, right, all of the Earth's biggest, strongest animals on this planet are strict herbivores. So just take that in for a moment. If you look at our fellow creatures, the biggest ones, the strongest ones are strict herbivores. They only eat plants. So that should give us some pause. That should give us a little bit of skepticism around this idea that in order to be healthy, in order to be strong, that we have to eat animal flesh. So the animals that do eat animal flesh, the carnivorous predators, they rarely, if ever, will try to kill healthy adult herbivores, because healthy adult herbivores are too fast and too strong for a carnivore to take down and kill. So in the animal kingdom, in the wild, when you think about predators, they are targeting the young, the old, and the sick herbivores. Those are the ones that are easier or attainable for them to actually stalk and catch and kill. So, this reminds me, I don't currently own any t-shirts with vegan messaging, but I often think, maybe this year I'll get myself one. And one of the ones I really love is, maybe you've seen it, Lucy, is you see two dinosaurs. One is a big herbivorous dinosaur like Brontosaurus, and then this little like meat-eating dinosaur comes up to the Brontosaurus and says, "Hey, where do you get your protein?" and the Brontosaurus is saying something like, "Oh, not this idiot again." So just because because that is like one of the first questions
Mhm.
people ask a vegan or somebody on a plant-based diet is, well, where in the world, how do you get any protein if you're not eating animals?
It drives you insane when you've searched this subject, because it really, there is no reason why people should have a concern on this, apart from, of course, like you said, if they're starving. But it is so often, and I just don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be a little crazy making. The more you know.
I mean, it's understandable why, because people like have been educated to think that this is a problem, right? So it makes sense in that sense. But since we know that it is not an issue, it's hard to to remember, like, anyways, understand why this is that people think it is a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is why we decided to
Yes.
make this our topic today, because we want to set your mind at ease that if you eat a wide variety of plants, you are going to thrive and you're going to have more than enough protein, actually.
Which is not hard to do.
It's not hard to do. Yes, exactly. It also reminds me of, the vegan restaurant here in town, here in Bozeman, Pharmacy. They like to use the phrase on their merchandise. When you walk in, I think even it's painted on their wall, or it was at one time, it says, eat like an ox.
Mm.
And so it just reminds you, once again, oxen are very strong animals, very strong
They're
animals.
huge.
They're huge, they're muscular, they're strong and powerful. And again, strict herbivores, only eat plants. Also, I just want to emphasize the point. All plants have some protein. Of course, there's plants, foods that have a lot more protein than others. We know that nuts and seeds and beans and legumes and lentils have tons, they're packed with protein. But even and vegetables, especially greens, tons of protein.
Broccoli.
Yes. But even fruits. So this may not be something that you've been taught at school, but I just want to set your mind at ease. And you can Google this. Guava. These are the fruits that have some of the most protein. Guava, passion fruit, of course, avocados and jackfruit, pomegranates, apricots, blackberries, raspberries, nectarines, kiwi, cherries, oranges, peaches, cantaloupe. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So even fruit that are the plants that maybe have the least amount of protein, they have tons of protein for you. So again, don't worry. And in fact, you can give yourself permission with confidence that going plant-based, you're going to get more than enough protein. But let's talk more about it. Maybe you're familiar with the blue zones. I think there's a documentary. In fact, I know there's a documentary. I'm hesitating because I'm not sure if it's on Amazon Prime or if it's on Netflix or where it's available exactly. My son actually watched it recently, and he's like, oh, we have to watch this together. It's so good. So if you haven't heard of the blue zones, basically that term was first coined by Dan Buettner, who is a National Geographic explorer and fellow and journalist. And during an exploratory project that he led in 2004 in Okinawa, Japan, he was sent there to investigate the longevity there. So he was sent to Okinawa, Japan, because there's so many people in that community who live to be over 100 years old and who are just so healthy, and they don't have the Western diseases that our, especially older people, have here in this country. And he was so captivated and curious about this, he decided to find out if there were other communities around the globe that also would fit into this idea of just high quality of life and longevity. So he was able to define 5 communities on the globe. He identified 5 areas of the world where people are healthiest and live the longest. Just if you're curious, those places are Sardinia, Italy, the islands of Okinawa, Japan, Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Ikaria, Greece, and Loma Linda, California. And they identify basically 9 characteristics that all of these places had in common. And they range from just having a strong community and a strong sense of purpose well into your age, well into your golden years. Having a spiritual belief was part of it. But one of the things they came up with is that all of these communities have a predominantly plant-based diet. They eat very little animal flesh or animal products at all. So again, when you're considering becoming a vegan or adopting a plant-based diet, remember the biggest, strongest animals on earth are herbivores. Remember that the healthiest humans on earth are predominantly herbivores. So hopefully we're starting to build a case here that this messaging that you hear from some people that the best thing for us to eat is animal flesh or animal secretions can at least be called into question, because the healthiest people on earth, the ones who don't have high blood pressure, the ones who don't have heart problems, the ones who don't have high cholesterol or dementia or type 2 diabetes or cancers, are actually not eating animals. So let's go ahead and dip our toes into just some basic biology. You have to start talking about a little science when you talk about protein. And, that's not my forte. I don't think Lucy feels like it's her forte. Nope. We don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of science.
Can't let the scientists talk, though.
Right. But I think we're up for the task. We can discuss science to a beneficial degree where we don't get lost in the weeds, but it still is helpful. And before we get into that, I just want to name some of the physicians and scientists that I'm citing or that were resources to me as we put this together. So definitely Dr. Faraz Harsini. He's a protein scientist at the Good Food Institute. He's a bioprocessing senior scientist. Also, Dr. Christopher Gardner, who's a research professor of medicine at Stanford Prevention Research Center and also at the Cardiovascular Institute. And then, of course, if you've ever watched any vegan documentaries, some of the doctors who appear quite frequently on vegan documentaries would be doctors like Michael Greger, Dr. Neil Barnard, Dr. Garth Davis, Caldwell Esselstyn, Dr. Kim Williams, who's a cardiologist, Dr. Milton Mills, Dr. Alan Desmond, who is a gastroenterologist. These are just some of the doctors that we cited or that we researched as putting together this show on protein. And of course, I'm sure there's many, many others out there. But some basic biology. So, number one, yes, protein is absolutely essential for health. It builds and maintains our muscle, but not just our muscle. Every single tissue in our body is made from protein. So like even if you can just consider the eye, right? The eyelash is made of protein. The clear cornea is made of protein. The muscle that controls the eye is made of protein. So it's pretty amazing, actually, that this substance can make such a diverse variety of tissues. So it's very important. And of course, keep in mind, we need the most protein when we are growing the most. So in utero and in our first few years of life where our growth is just exponential, that's when we need the most protein. And that's true of any mammal. But you could say we don't need protein specifically. What we really need are the amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein. There are 20 amino acids, and they've been divided into two groups, basically what we call the essential amino acids and the non-essential amino acids. And the difference there is that they're called essential because our bodies don't have the enzymes to create them, which means we need to get them from our diet. And then the non-essential amino acids are ones that our bodies do synthesize on their own. And it's cut about half and half, depending on your source. Some say there's 9 essential amino acids. Some say there's 8 essential amino acids. Some of them are conditionally essential, like sometimes your body can make them and sometimes your body can't make them. So it gets a little confusing, but basically half of them we can make on our own and half of them we need to get through our diet. So all dietary animal protein sources or dietary plant protein sources have the same 20 amino acids in different amounts and concentrations. Both essential and non-essential amino acids have many of the same functions in the human body. Those functions, of course, are the production of proteins, also enzymes and hormones, as well as regulating gene expression and digestion. So they play a very crucial central role to our health. But here's something that I love, the way Dr. Milton Mills says it. He really is very forward when he says, only plants make protein. So let's just say that again. Only plants make protein. So what makes protein is the element nitrogen. And only plants are able to take nitrogen out of the air, and only plants have the enzymes to turn that nitrogen into protein. So all protein that is found in animal flesh is recycled plant protein. So where your quote unquote protein, your steak or your hamburger, where they got their protein is from plants. So the argument is always, let's cut out the middleman and let's get our protein straight from the plants. There is nothing in animal tissues that we need or that we can't find in a healthier form in plant foods. There are scores of nutrients in plant foods that you cannot get in animal protein. Okay, so that's something you don't hear from the keto people at all, is that all the things that you're lacking in that animal flesh that we need, like antioxidants and phytochemicals and the various kinds of fiber, which doctors more and more are saying that's the thing that Americans are lacking in the most, is fiber for a healthy gut. Without fiber, all kinds of bad things start to happen, including autoimmune diseases. So there was definitely a time in history where, and probably even until today, that some people say that the dietary animal protein is a better quality protein for human consumption. That is being strongly contested. And of course, just once again, I'm just going to say once again, remember the largest, strongest animals on the planet are not eating animal flesh. It's not necessary to eat flesh to make flesh. Also, I think it's also important to remember there is one time in the lives of herbivores where they do consume animal protein, right? That's in their infancy, when they're babies, just like human babies. They're going through that very quick growth time of their lives where they're literally building a body or growing their body exponentially. And so during that rapid growth phase, they consume animal protein in the form of their mother's milk. So animal protein, it's important to remember that it's a potent growth stimulant. And that can actually turn ugly if we get too much of it as adults, because we're not in the growth period of our lives, we're in the maintenance. And if we're giving our bodies all this growth stimulant, it ends up in not so healthy ways, causing growth in our bodies. Also, I want you to know that I learned that we are very good recyclers of amino acids. Every time a tissue breaks down, we metabolize the proteins into amino acids that become available for reuse to make whatever new proteins are required. Every day, our body dumps about 90 grams of protein into our digestive tract and breaks it down and recycles the amino acids. This is because every day the entire lining of our gastrointestinal tract is sloughed off, digested, and reabsorbed. So we have plenty of amino acids in our bodies. And as we mentioned earlier, what limits the rate and the efficiency of muscle building is actually not enough calories from carbs or fat. So what will help your body use the protein is to make sure you're getting enough carbs and fat, which gives your body the energy to use the protein. So again, we should only consume as much protein as we are using. And again, that's when your body is being built. But there are distinct disadvantages to eating too much protein that your body can't use. Your body cannot store protein. That's an important point as well. So there's no physiologic advantage to consuming protein far in excess of your daily needs. Another thing to consider is that when you consume dietary animal protein, it actually starts to break down your skeleton, your bones, because the sulfur in the animal protein is metabolized to acid, which causes calcium loss in the urine and weakens your bones, causing or contributing to the development of osteoporosis. Again, it's important to point out, I think, that although our country is one of the largest consumers of dairy, we also have the highest rate of osteoporosis. So you have to ask the question, if we're getting all this calcium with our cheese and our yogurt and our milk and our cottage cheese and sour cream, on and on, why do we still have such a high rate of osteoporosis?
Which is incredible when you think about it. Like the power of advertising, again, they turned a product that actually makes your bones weaker into something that is necessary for your bones' health.
Yeah.
That is mind-blowing.
It is. It is. It's like everybody knows, oh, you want strong bones? Drink your milk, eat your cheese. Actually, that's leaching calcium out of your bones because it's so acidic and your body has to neutralize that acid. And so it's actually, you're losing bone calcium. Something that, again, you're not going to hear on the advertising. This also leads, high protein diets are associated with elevated risks of kidney stones.
That makes sense, yeah.
But plant proteins, conversely, are always buffered. The acid in the protein is buffered by phosphate. So people on plant-based diets have actually higher bone density than people who eat meat. So how much protein do you actually need? So I have one formula that uses kilograms, based on your body mass, basically your kilograms, or one formula based on if you want to use pounds of your weight. So you need 0.5 grams to 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of your weight per day. Or again, the one that uses pounds, it's 0.4 grams per your pounds per day. So that averages out to be about 40 to 60 grams of protein a day for adults. So that's important to keep in mind. I know some people in my life who love to lift weights, and I try to lift weights as well. And I've heard some of them say that you should be getting 150 grams or 160 grams of protein a day if you want to build muscle. So this is much, much less than the kind of the knowledge that's out there, that's floating around the weight rooms, right? This is a lot less. Also, there used to be, unfortunately, this idea that you have to complement proteins in order to get a complete protein. You need to eat certain foods together, and that has been found to be not true. In fact, the person that came out with that way of thinking actually retracted it and says that you don't need to worry about that.
Is it like the cereal with lentils kind of thing?
I remember it being like, eat your rice with beans.
Yeah, I heard that a lot. I remember.
Yeah, then it'll be a complete protein.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to worry about that at all. There's no truth to that.
That's nice.
Yeah. Also, regular exercise does help your body utilize protein more efficiently. So exercise is important for this reason, as well as all the other reasons that exercise is important. So most Americans, including vegetarians and vegans, get about twice as much protein as they need every day. Again, even vegetarians and vegans are getting about twice as much as they actually need every day. Think about those protein shakes, things like that. You know, a lot of these doctors are saying they're kind of a waste. You don't really need that. They do say if you're doing some elite athletic endeavor, running a marathon or something, even there's many, many things that people do like that. If you really want to have the strength and the stamina, consider increasing your intake of fat for energy.
That's interesting. You don't hear that much.
No, you don't hear that much.
Dang.
As we start to talk more about some of the health problems that are associated with eating too much animal protein, I think it's important to just mention, you know, many doctors are very transparent about the fact that our Western medical model, doctors are not educated on how to help their patients prevent disease or how to even cure disease. Our medical model is built around helping people manage their symptoms. And they're not really trained, they're not trained at all, really, on nutrition and how a diet contributes to your health or your propensity for disease. So keep that in mind when you think, well, why has my doctor never mentioned what I eat when I go in and I'm complaining about my ailments? You know, why when they prescribe high blood pressure medication or a surgery to have my gallbladder removed, why does my diet never factor in as a consideration? Keep that in mind, that they're just simply not trained to even address that.
I've heard people going to their physician and their physician says like, oh, maybe you should introduce animal products back in your diet. But they're not saying that because they have necessarily training in nutrition. They're saying that because they're a normal person and they're just they're considering themselves an expert when they're not necessarily. So we got to be careful about just look into the credentials of your doctor when it comes to nutrition as well.
Yes, because so many of these doctors that I cited for this research, they had to go out on their own time and research diet and diet's role in our health. The typical MD does not graduate with any training on nutrition. So animal protein has been linked to the following diseases: heart diseases, many cancers, including colon, breast, prostate, pancreatic. Because keep in mind, meat and dairy are potent cancer promoters. Diabetes, osteoporosis, prion diseases, Alzheimer's and other dementias, high blood pressure, strokes, kidney failure, kidney stones, dysentery, and other foodborne illnesses. And the putrefaction of animal protein in the human colon releases toxins, which cause a whole host of health problems. Here's something else I would like you to remember is that it's impossible for a true carnivore to develop clogged arteries. So just think about that. A true carnivore can eat only flesh, only animal flesh. They never get high cholesterol or clogged arteries or high blood pressure.
Why would they, right? Yeah.
Their bodies are physiologically tuned, chemically tuned to be able to break down animal flesh. The fact that so many of our citizens struggle with clogged arteries, heart problems, right, should be an indication to us that we are actually not true carnivores. Something to keep in mind.
I think that's huge. To me, that's mind-blowing. When I learned that, I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a perspective changer.
Yeah.
And it's hard to argue with that. There are epidemics of chronic diseases in this country and in the Western world, especially linked to protein overconsumption. But many Americans say they are actively trying to get more protein into their diets. You can see the problem there. There's this misunderstanding that is actually leading to more disease. So since animal protein, like we've said, causes growth, it's a huge growth stimulant. If you're getting too much of that, especially animal protein, you will start to see things like tumors, benign or cancerous tumors, cysts, skin tags, lipomas, uterine fibroids, liver cancer, kidney cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer. These are all cancers that have been linked directly to animal protein. So again, you're delivering all of these building materials into your diet when your body really doesn't need to build anymore, but it has to go somewhere. And so it starts growing these abnormal growths in your body. Plant proteins have a lot less leucine, that's one of the amino acids, than animal proteins contain. They have enough leucine to keep you healthy, but not enough to turn on cancer cell growth like animal protein does. Dropping dietary animal protein drops the hormone IGF-1, which you may know is insulin-like growth factor 1, which will help you drop your risk of cancer. One of the things Dr. Alan Desmond says that meat is lacking so many of the substances that are good for us, and it's so rich in substances that are actually bad for us that he just says, stay away from meat. And he's, again, the gastroenterologist. So for your gut health, here we have a doctor here saying, please stay away from meat. As we know, we know celebrities and all kinds of people who are on this strict carnivore diet. Rich Roll, who has a podcast, the Rich Roll podcast, he was interviewing Professor Christopher Gardner from Stanford University. And he said, the high quality study that a lot of people would love to see is a good comparison of the all meat diet to the plant-based diet. And why are there no good studies comparing those two diets? And Gardner was like, with everything that we know about nutrition, it would actually be unethical to do a study wherein a group of people were required to eat only meat for a protracted period of time.
Because they know that it's just terrible.
Yeah. So I thought that was so interesting. He was saying it would be unethical to do that study. It would be unethical to require a group of people to eat only meat. We can't do that study.
I guess they should just take the people who are already carnivores and committed to it.
Yeah.
But even then, would they actually be on board with that, the doctors?
I don't know. I mean, but do you remember that documentary several years ago called Super Size Me? This man said, I'm going to eat nothing but McDonald's 3 meals a day for a month, and I'm just going to see what happens to my health. So he got blood work done before he went on this McDonald's diet. So they measured all his, whatever they measure when they do blood work. And then they measured his blood again after he ate nothing but McDonald's. And of course, I didn't rewatch it for this show today, but I just remember they were gravely concerned. Not only did he gain a ton of weight, but his liver was shot, and the cholesterol and all of those kinds of things had really gone in a bad direction. So the good news is that the growing body of nutritional research is illuminating the fallacy of this cultural myth that we have to eat a lot of animal protein to be healthy. Research has shown that all plants contain protein, and at least 14% of the calories of every plant are protein. So every plant has protein, and at least 14% of their calories is actually protein. Again, even fruits have protein. Vegetables have more, especially greens. Grains have more than that. Nuts and seeds are loaded with protein. Beans, legumes, lentils have unbelievable amounts of protein. So if you think about that, if you sit down for lunch or whatever and you have a bowl of quinoa or brown rice and you put some greens in there, like kale or collard greens, you maybe have some roasted vegetables like sweet potatoes or broccoli, and you put some beans in there.
Don't forget the sauce.
And some yummy, yummy, delicious, flavorful sauces. Yeah. you have all the protein you need for that day in just that one meal. So, I'm thinking about pharmacy restaurant or Five on Black, or,
Yeah, yeah.
you could go in there and just get a grain bowl, lots of a variety of different vegetables and fruits and grains on there, and you have all the protein you need.
And I just want to say real quick that, of course, to be on a plant-based diet, you don't have to eat a whole food plant-based diet, but it is, of course, what is recommended by like the nutritionists. It is the healthiest plant-based diet for sure. But of course, it doesn't mean that if you want to, you can still be healthy and eat a little bit of junk food in terms of like, a plant-based diet, plant-based junk food. Sorry. And they've actually, there's just, I don't know if you heard of that. Like, there's a study that just came out showing that the heavily processed fake meats, like the tofu sausages, things like this, or the Impossible Burgers, they've done studies and they're actually shown that they're not linked to diseases and problems, like health problems, which is something I wasn't expecting, which is, it's good news as well. But
yeah, that is really interesting.
Go look into that. It's pretty recent.
Yeah. Yeah, so of course people always pull out examples of, I knew a vegan and they got so sick, and then you start to look at, well, yeah, all they ate of just a very small variety of foods, very low nutrition. You can be on a plant-based diet and eat junk food, basically. Yes. It's very possible. So you're not going to be unhealthy or have those health problems if you're eating a wide variety of plants. It's the
same as like if you're not on a plant-based diet, right? If you're not on a plant-based diet, there's plenty of people that have developed plenty of diseases, right? Because it didn't do it right. It's the same with plant-based diet. You just have to eat healthy.
Exactly. Yes. I'm looking at a list right now of plant foods: soybeans, cashew nuts, pumpkin seeds, beans, peas, quinoa, wheat, rice, tofu, and seaweed. That's just a partial list here, but they have all of the amino acids. So definitely all the essential amino acids are in just these simple plant foods.
Which is crazy because I hear as well people say that you can't get these amino acids easily in plants, but it's just straight up not true.
Yeah.
It's strange, but anyways.
Yes. Again, keep in mind, if you doubt this, remember there are millions of vegans throughout the centuries who were very, very healthy, disease-free, even athletic. There are plenty of athletes, professional athletes you can look up online.
Yeah, Game Changers, the documentary, it features like plant-based athletes, bodybuilders. We know actually a plant-based bodybuilder in real life.
Yes.
He's really cool, yeah. So he's been to Vegas, like in his age category. He's been like second, I think. Anyways.
Yeah, he does really well, and he's completely vegan. So yes, that should be a testimony. And remember the blue zones, and remember
and the China study, and also, it can be helpful just to mention quickly the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics again, which is like one of the biggest groups of nutritionists. They've based their stance on a vegan diet, on a plant-based diet, which is that it's adequate for all ages when it's well planned. And it's based on 117 studies, and some of them are meta-analysis, which is one of the highest forms of evidence you can get on the hierarchy of evidence, so that's something that's really cool to know.
It's good to know. There's plenty of good science-based research, well-run studies,
peer-reviewed,
that show that you can be more than healthy. You could be thriving and vibrant and disease-free on a plant-based diet. If you're starting to be curious, vegan curious, plant-based curious, we just encourage you that you can do it. And it's never been easier.
Yeah.
To go plant-based.
It's not hard to plan because a lot of people have this misconception that it's going to be complicated to figure out forever. But really, it's the transition. It's like any habit. You got to figure out, like, how do I make a meal without, like, these products that I've been using my whole life? But once you figure that out and it's not that hard, you're good to go. It's really not as hard as we think it is. It's mostly mental and emotional, like the attachment you might have to these foods, and then...
Right. And I mean, I just love that I can go online and just type in vegan, fill in the blank. I really feel like whatever it is, lasagna, tacos, whatever. And you could just type in vegan recipes and you will get millions.
Oh, it's so many. It's crazy now.
Be encouraged that it's pretty simple. It'll feel a little overwhelming. I'm not going to deny that at first.
At first, like all habits, really. Yeah.
Yes, but it's very doable.
Especially if you're doing it because you're vegan and you want to not abuse animals and exploit animals. It's so much easier.
Exactly. That's so true. If you're doing it out of a heart of compassion and justice, it really takes away the difficulty. It makes it a very easy choice.
It puts everything into perspective because it's so easy for you compared to what it is like for the animals to be exploited and used and abused, all these things.
Mm-hmm. So Michael Greger says we should all be eating fruits and vegetables as if our lives depend on it, because they do. So thank you, Michael Greger, one of my heroes, for sure. Look him up. He's a part of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and that entire committee is plant-based. So before we end our show today, we wanted to give an update on Wayne Sheng. We've talked about him on a couple of previous episodes. He is an attorney and an animal rights activist, and he was on trial in Sonoma County over the past, I guess it's been a process, it's been over the past several months, but he was in jail awaiting sentencing because they found him guilty for going into some chicken and duck farms in 2018 and 2019. He's a co-founder of Direct Action Everywhere, and they claim the right to rescue, maintaining that it's akin to the right to break into a car to rescue a dog in hot temperatures. So they're saying we have a right to go into these farms and rescue some of these animals, especially the ones who are clearly needing medical attention. And so he was on trial and he was facing up to several years in prison. I think it's good news in my mind. I was
relieved when I heard that.
They did sentence him to 90 days in prison and 2 years of probation, including for those 2 years, he's not allowed to have any contact with his other people in this organization, other rescuers, other activists. So compared to what we thought he was going to get, that's really good news. Of course, in this case, they had plenty of footage to show the conditions that these animals are being kept in and how sick and in pain they are. And none of that footage was allowed in it. All the video was barred from being played for the jury because it was deemed prejudicial. We just are thankful for people like Wayne and everybody really who lives vegan and who...
Some other activists, like friends of his, have been arrested, like very recently as well, in the same thing. Yeah, I wanted to say something about this because not all vegans necessarily agree with this. It's not like everybody agrees with this type of action, but especially because it might be seen as like, oh, we're kind of arguing with the conditions of how they're exploited. These activists are vegan. They are against animal exploitation and all use. But there's different ways to go about getting animal rights, I guess. And not everybody, there's like different... I guess that would be an interesting conversation to have as well. But it's an interesting way to talk about animal rights, to talk about the conditions that the animals are raised in. When, we vegans obviously oppose all of that, right? But either way, rescues are a very important way to do activism, that's for sure.
Yeah, because it would be like, oh, there's a right way to have slaves.
Exactly.
There's a right way to exploit children. There's a more humane way to... So if it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. And we shouldn't be trying to improve the conditions under which you're doing these things. We should just say, let's get rid of it.
Yeah, and save all these individuals whenever they're exploited, right? Which I guess is kind of like if they were only, let's say, humane farms, let's say, and they were all super happy up until the point and exploited while they were, I guess, well treated while they were exploited, and then they were murdered or whatever, and still commodified and enslaved while they were quote unquote happy, whatever that means. Even then, activists like Wayne Chang, I'm sure, would still be like, okay, let's rescue them. They're not free; they're slaves. They're exploited. Yes. Let's just have them free and not bred into existence and and forcefully inseminated and mutilated, or whatever they do to them. So
right. Yeah, and I think especially in the legal world, when we're trying to make progress in the legal world, I think incremental progress is the only way it happens. So we make a little step forward, and then maybe after that we can make another little step forward. But yeah, there's plenty of people who are saying actually the humane labels and all that kind of stuff, it just misleads the consumer into paying more money for animals who are still exploited. And
still reinforces the idea that there is a right way to have slaves and to exploit someone.
Right. So it can alleviate our conscience.
Exactly.
For really not improving anything.
Yeah.
So it is an interesting conversation, but I do respect immensely Wayne Chang and all of his activists.
Rescuing these animals that were
Yeah.
slaves and obviously a horrible condition.
Yeah, of course, when they rescue them, they take them to a sanctuary, they get them veterinary help. And
these individuals are actually now free and taken care of. And it's just, it's really beautiful and a lot of courage to do that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, big sacrifice. Thank you for joining us today on Animalia Hour, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.